Welcome to our last session of the day and of the conference. So we're going to spend some time for about the next 30 minutes talking about what we've learned and what has been confirmed about what we know related to transfer. Before we do so, Laura sent out a message a few minutes ago about lost and found. We do have some items in that lost and found that are really important to people, so make sure that you get a chance. Check your things, check yourself, then check out with Laura in case you're missing anything, because we want to make sure that you have a chance to get that from everybody. So please, don't leave your things behind in the ATL. Well, it has been approximately 2 days, if you think about it from the standpoint of the 24-hour period, that I stood up here and welcomed you to Atlanta and said we were going to have an incredible time visiting with one another about transfer. And I hope that that foreshadowing has played out in a way that you are going to take home some very tangible things with you. The design of this conference is very intentional. We keep it at a size that allows you to run into each other multiple times. You see the same faces when you're at the coffee break, when you're in your sessions, when you're in different places. And we feel like that gives you the opportunity then to find those people who both challenge you and enrich you when it comes to your learning process at the conference. So that's, again, very intentional by design, such that we're interacting. And that's a big part of the learning process as we see it at NISTS. So again, let's talk about what we've learned and what we've confirmed, because it never fails that when I'm here, I learned so much, but I'm also energized because I'm glad to know that we're on the same page as organizers of a conference, and really as folks participating in the national landscape. It's so important for us to check in and make sure that we are hearing from all of you that we're on the right track. And when we're not on the right track, how it is that we need to get there. So what we've learned and what we're confirming. First of all, again, these are going to be no-brainers, but these are just things that either we learned while we were here or things that potentially we are confirming. The students have a lot to say. And so often we make assumptions about these individuals without ever consulting them about themselves, who they are, what their experiences have been either getting to or being a part of your institutional communities, and what their goals are. And we heard from multiple presenters, as well as the students themselves, that we need to be hearing their voices to confirm the things that we're doing and perhaps reroute some of the things that we're not doing. So A, we've got to talk to these folks, most definitely, and find out what it is that they know, what their opinions are, and most importantly, do something with that knowledge. There's nothing worse than working hard to conduct a focus group and the data sit on a computer in an office, or just with the group of people that were in that meeting. We really need to make sure that we're disseminating those findings, and then that we change our practices, or maybe not. Maybe talk more about our practices based upon what we're learning. So the students have a lot to say. Let's figure out what that is, and let's do something with it. We also learned that removing barriers from transfer isn't enough. And we know that just thinking about all the barriers that we either intentionally or unintentionally put in front of these students is huge. There are barriers left and right, and it's different based upon institution. We learned that it's also something that can happen at the state level. Many times these are unintentional consequences of these decisions that we're making. But what are those barriers? Identify those barriers, and more importantly, not only removing those, but removing the stigma. It's another thing you heard from the students that we talked about, is that stigma related to being a transfer, and then just the transfer process. We still have a long way to go, and of course you heard that again this morning when you're talking to somebody who's supposedly an activist and who's thinking about folks from a civil rights perspective, and they're still misguided when it comes to transfer, the transfer process, and the quality of students that are moving through that pathway and those pathways. Again, we have a lot of work to do to help folks remove and understand that stigma, and then remove that stigma. Okay, another thing we've learned is faculty are critical to this conversation. Again, some of you are hearing that for the first time and thinking, oh yes, I don't ever have the opportunity to interface with faculty, or actually I haven't taken the opportunity to interface with faculty members in my work that I do. I need to change that. What can I do to change that? Others of you go, no brainer, I'm a faculty. I would love to spend more time, but I'm in the classroom. I'm thinking about my research. Let's get out there and spend some time with the practitioners who are working. So again, it's that whole notion of bringing everybody into the conversation. But the important thing is, like we always say, make transfer relevant to the faculty members' work. And that comes in a couple of different packages. What you can do with that is think about what are the research interests of those faculty members. Do you know? How can transfer be woven into that? And in some cases it can't. You might not be able to shift research agendas, but by educating them, maybe they're thinking about transfers in a different way. So figuring out what their research agenda is important. Yesterday, we had some hands raised as far as like who are our transfers, who in this room had transferred. Some of those folks were faculty members. Find out who those folks are on your campus who in the faculty ranks who did transfer. Wow, what an amazing set of advocates that you've got there. So it's relevant to their work as a person, relative to their research, but think about the fact that you might have a faculty member whose department is somewhat struggling. Maybe they're trying to get their population of their students up. Maybe they're in danger of their department closing. Who knows? But wouldn't it be wonderful to be able to say, we can help you recruit quality students into your program through the transfer pathway? How can we partner to do that? So there are lots of ways that you can engage faculty, but you know, just like any of us, we are busy. We have agendas. So you have to be very strategic in thinking about how you're going to reach out to those faculty members and make it make sense in their world. And how you do that, again, we heard that today, but I can't stress this enough, is the data matter. You've got to know who your transfer students are. We heard from both Barbara and Trudy yesterday about a sample of transfer students and what they want out of their experience, but I would like to assert that that's probably not something we can yet generalize to everybody. So it's really important that above all, you know your population. And one of the neatest things that you can do is get that information, whether it be just demographic or maybe some things from your focus groups, and take it to your advising staff. Take it to your faculty, your administration, and give them a quiz. You'll find out really quickly that either they get it, or they might be absolutely surprised to realize that their conceptualization of your transfer population is actually quite skewed because maybe they've been listening to the masses. Maybe they've had very limited exposure, so they're making assumptions based on what they're seeing externally, but you have to help them know what's going on internally. And again, invite them to utilize their expertise. I absolutely loved the opportunity we heard from Jay Edward yesterday to talk about some of the techniques that he's using in his classroom. How fun is a communications faculty member to take on a simple assignment? You're going to have your students do assignments anyway, right? How cool is it to talk about the transfer process and then more importantly, propagate that information in a way that helps the students learn themselves and also educates those around them. So again, that's firing up faculty where they are, and that's really important. So I also like to think about things of beginning with the end in mind, and I know we heard that very early on. And so when I say that, some of the questions that we heard were, what does it look like to be transfer prepared? That's kind of the end. We say we need to prepare our transfers to transfer. What does that look like? How do we define that? Because then we can't get everybody on board to talk about that until we know what it is we're trying to achieve, what we want these students to achieve. So what is it like? And again, these aren't definitive. This is just kind of a set of questions that illustrate, begin with the end in mind. Secondly, how do we want our transfers to be engaged on our campus? Isn't that a great way to really start thinking through the transfer experience? And we talked a lot about engagement here, and again, that's another thing that I think gets a lot of mixed reviews when it comes to transfer students. And it's very important that we think about engagement differently when we're talking about our transfer students, because I assert that yes, they do want to be engaged. It's just how that's defined and what they have available to them in order to be engaged. I will always assert that our transfer students need ultimate engagement opportunities in their discipline. Bottom line is they are going to school, That is where they spend most of their time, is in the classroom. How can we engage them around their discipline? But don't negate the fact that some of these students truly want what they would consider to be a traditional student experience. But it has to look different, right? In one of our focus groups that we did quite a while ago, one of the students told me, I wish I had somebody to go to the football games with. Of course, because transfer students do what? They come to us and they make assumptions that everybody else has friends. And they don't. We had another student say, I ate by myself in the cafeteria every day for the first semester. Again, we make assumptions about transfers, but guess what? They make assumptions about their cultures. And so I will assert, again, that transfer students want to be connected. They want to be engaged, but we have to go and ask them what that means to them. And that's super, super important. Another thought to consider is, what does it look like, and I liked the way that Paula put this today, trusting partnerships. I thought that was a really good thing to think through, because we talk a lot about how partnerships drive transfer. Transfer will not happen without partnerships, whether it's intra, inter, institutional, statewide, whatever that looks like. So when you think about that, what about those partnerships between our own campus communities, the faculty, staff, and administrators, and I'd say students? Failed to put those on there, but yes, our students. What about within our institutional partners? Those folks who are either local. We talk a lot about transfer being a local phenomenon and how important it is to think about that, those partnerships that are in our backyard. We've done in the past a Star Award, not the Rising Star, but a different type of Star Award for transfer programs that really excelled. And it was a collection of activities that had come out of a private institution in New York. And this campus, it was a 2-year institution, and, or actually it was a 4-year institution, and they had never, ever recruited from the community college in their community. For whatever reason, they were always looking further and in different places. And then they had a new person come on staff and admissions and say, what about these folks right next door? So they went and did some really amazing kind of commonsensical things, like actually inviting themselves to be in the same space. Not only did they invite those counselors, which we do a lot, we invite the community college counselors to the 4-year campuses, etc., but they invited them to a picnic in a neutral location. They played softball together. They had t-shirts for the event. They got to know one another. And I'll tell you what, in 1 year, they were able to change their enrollment patterns from that campus exponentially. So again, it's just all about those partnerships, but you're exactly right. They couldn't just go there and say, hey, we're in your backyard, we're your new friends, when that community college had never been invited to the table. That was not a trusting relationship. They developed the trusting relationship over time and with effort and intentionality. And then again, across our state. You heard earlier today the conversation about how important statewide initiatives are, and some of those are mandates, and some of those are really organically grown in a way that makes sense for our institutions. Sometimes our legislatures get involved, sometimes they don't. It varies from state to state. Some are more prescriptive than others, but I contend that at every level, even if this is the first time you've ever seen yourself in thinking about how legislative action affects you, I encourage you to keep your eyes and ears open, because oftentimes when you're unaware, things happen to you and not with you. And we want those partnerships and those trusting partnerships to be formed. So something else we learned is we need a strategic focus on transfer. We're fortunate because more and more, you heard Dr. Jacobs talk on day 1 about how there was nothing or very limited literature back in 2001 when she was trying to figure out how to manage a campus that was 54% transfer. Times have changed. We have full volumes from associations that are focused on transfer. I had the pleasure of editing something a couple years ago with John Gardner's wife, Betsy Barefoot, that was focused strictly on transfers, and we called it the new normal. We kind of appropriated one of John's favorite comments, but we gave him credit. So there are lots of things that are we're seeing dissertations out there now, left and right. But where's that focus, that strategic focus on transfer to really make a difference, to be able to take the data to say, this is what works. It's so difficult to scale things in transfer, mainly because we don't have the evidence that we need to make that happen. That's only one of the reasons, but again, it's a key reason. So again, in this, we need to ensure that we're including faculty members. And again, transfer is a new discipline. We can't assume that faculty don't want to study transfer. We might need to implore them to study transfer and give them a reasons to study transfer. We want that. Also, practitioners, again, as Judith mentioned the other day, play a valuable role in the research process, whether it is that you're providing your perspectives or you're engaged in as a practitioner scholar. And we want to see more and more of that as well. So what say you? You've been hanging out with us for a couple of days. I'm curious to know what it is that you have either learned or confirmed over the course of the last few days. And we've got microphones on either side, and Judith has one over here, but the volume's not quite so high, but we're filming, so I want to make sure that we're heard. So anybody want to share anything that they have either learned that kind of knocked their socks off, or that you're like, whew, I've confirmed? Yes, please.
Thank you. For me, I think literally what, I guess in a sense, knocked my socks off, the very first session I attended was about listening to the transfer story. And I'm an admissions counselor. My whole sense up until that point was just to kind of recruit the student, kind of tell you what you needed to do, let's get it on, get your application in and so forth. And the presenter of the, and I apologize if she's here and I don't know your name, but when she mentioned learning the story, finding out the story about the transfer, and I've always said that, I work with a very diverse group of students, someone who maybe one semester out of another institution, all the way up to the 75-year-old who never finished a degree but now wants to come back. I wasn't listening to their story. And I think I can make their transition to my institution a lot better if I do listen to their story so that I can integrate or interact with them on a different level other than just being just solely one who's just trying to get the process done. So that was kind of one of my big takeaways, and it literally happened the first day I was here. So.
Excellent. Tell us your name and where you
Terrence Andrews, Maryville University, St. Louis.
Great. Thank you, Terrence. She disclosed, so I was going to let you know she's one of our faculty attendees. So.
Yes, and I know they keep asking at every session how many faculty, and it's really a minority. Mm-hmm. But I think faculty need to be involved in this conversation, and in some of the sessions I hear that reaffirmingly. We look at the students and we only know their academic side, but I think advisors and counselors, know more about their background, where they went to school, number of credits. I'm kind of thinking about myself. When I came here, I was 23, an unknown country, a lot of things that, I was really perplexed and anxious. I feel the transfer students are the same way, moving to a different institution. So they're apprehensive about a lot of things. But as faculty, we have a lot of input to give. So it's a teamwork that we need to work together. Faculty have a lot of input in the process of transfer. We don't have to be involved in every way, but once in a while having a chat, I think that's really helpful for faculty as well as for the institutions.
Great.
And this has been great. So, and especially I liked all the sessions, and the one with Alfred, the pre-conference, that was the best. And that was my first, and it was really worth it. Thank you, Alfred.
Hi there. So this is my first time attending this conference, and I just want to say how much I've really appreciated having that holistic view that this conference has brought together, both in terms of curriculum alignment and the kinds of things that I typically work on related to general education and meta majors and guided pathways, but also with the admission side and with that really holistic view of the student in mind and with that systemic alignment. I think it's done a really good job of thinking about the various aspects that need to work together in order to make the process more seamless for students going forward. So just, it's been really good.
I appreciate that. That's one thing that we have the luxury of being able to provide, because so many other conferences are focused on their discipline. And Max, we've got another one up here. Is that, you know, whenever you're at your discipline-specific conference, you might have a few things on transfer, but they're going to be related to your discipline. And that's a good thing. But also it is nice to be able to talk about it comprehensively, because transfer happens through every facet of the campus in the institution. Mike.
Hi, I'm Mike Rosenberg with the John Gardner Institute. I've been here for, this is my, I think 4 years. 4 years ago was my first NISTS conference. And one of the things that I've noticed in looking at the sessions and attending the sessions in that time is that the we has changed when folks talk about what's going on in transfer. I remember the first time I came here, I was really excited because I wanted to get, you know, promising practices and seeing what other people were doing around transfer. And it was a lot of stuff was very institution specific and very departmental specific. I saw a lot of that sort of thing. Over even just the last 4 years, that we is now much more institutional focused, partnership focused, university and legislature focused. It's really broadened. The focus has broadened, which means that the message is getting out. To me, it means the message is getting out about how important the work is that we're doing. And I think that's for me, it really pumps me up to see all the good stuff that's going on.
Great.
Hi, I'm Diablin Wymore. I'm from Florida State University. This is my first time at this conference. It's my institution's first time at this conference. And kind of to expand on what was just said is I have really appreciated getting to hear what other states, not just other institutions, are doing and going through. It's something like sitting at breakfast this morning, I had a 30-minute conversation with people from like all across the country about how we're dealing with the same issue in different ways because of our state policy and our state resources and our state legislature and things like that. So I just really appreciated having that perspective and being able to take that information back to my own institution and saying like, okay, this is what they're working in and how they're doing it based on that, but here's what we're working in and how we can modify it based on our statewide initiatives. So thank you.
That's great, and I think that's an excellent observation. We're definitely broadening the conversation to the levels that we need, you know, and again, that needs to continue. The next thing I want you all to think about is, you know, really and truly, where do we go from here? What's your challenge? We've talked about how easy it is to come to a conference, get so stoked about what you're learning, get in your method of transportation back home, and it just, as you start getting closer to home, you start thinking about the things you have to do and the things that you need to attend to that you've really not thought about for the last 2.5 days. And, you know, all of a sudden you get back to work and you've got piles of emails and things. So my challenge, or actually, you know, my urging is to give you just a minute to think about how do you bridge that gap, if you will, or that time span between what you've been doing here, the things you've learned, the enthusiasm perhaps you've brought upon yourself, and what will you do that first day back in the office, whether it's Monday, Tuesday, whatever that might look like, to then actually activate some of the learning that you have had over the last few days. So just take a minute. Some of you are like goal-oriented people that if you put it down on paper, it'll happen. Others of you are just thoughtful and can think through that. But what are you going to do to take what you've learned here, just one thing, and make sure that it gets legs and that you do something with it when you get back? Nobody ever thinks they need a microphone, but we'll just blame it on the camera. We need everybody to speak into a microphone.
I'm Kathy Brantley, and I'm the transfer coordinator at USC Aiken. That is a regional campus of the University of South Carolina system. USC has about 35,000 students. My campus has 3,400 altogether. A few hundred of those are my transfers. So I'm it for transfers. If you are a transfer student, you have to deal with me. So what I'm going to do about this is I've been to this conference before, and like you said, I get so excited, and then I take notes, lots of notes, and I get back to campus, and yes, I get busy, and I think of some of these things, and I think I need to talk to my boss about this, or I need to go, and 6 weeks later, I pull the notes out, and I don't know what they mean. So what I've done this time is very intentionally made a bulleted list. I have my notes. I've gone back over them every night, made a bulleted list of suggestions for things that we could do on my campus that I think would immediately, like not pie in the sky. I have another list like that that's kind of going to be a wish list, but things I think we could do right away. And along with making that list, I have thought about who will I need to involve in that? What resources will I need? People, time, money. And then I've prioritized those, starting with the ones that won't take any money and that I can maybe pull off myself, and then gone, down the list with that. And I intend to write a report before I go back to work Monday. I'm going to do that over the weekend because it won't happen if I wait till Monday. And then present that to my boss and ask him to please pass that on. And maybe next year I'll let you know how that went. But that's my plan.
I suggest that you put in a proposal for next year's conference about how to get the best out of your experience and translate that back to your home campus.
Well, that will depend on how well this works.
We're being optimistic. We've got another comment right over here.
I'm Crystal Roscom. I'm with the University of Montevallo in Montevallo, Alabama. I am the only transfer person on campus. I was actually a transfer student. I just started 9 months ago, a week after I graduated from the institution. And so I just have a big heart for transfer students, and it's something that they recognized immediately when I was just initially talking about even doing this job. But one of the things that I'm taking away from here is just that idea of partnerships across campus. When I first started, I had faculty that were like, how can we help you? And I'm like, I don't know. So now that I've been here and now that I've been doing this for about 9 months, I have all these ideas. I have some goals that I'm wanting to achieve. So I've actually already set up in a meeting with my boss and our interim VP just to kind of go over some things that I want to do in maybe like a 2-year plan, some things we can do and kind of build this into being a more transfer-friendly institution because it's something we desperately need and we recognize that. But it's just kind of given me some rubber to meet the road for what needs to happen. So I'm really fired up from this conference and looking forward to coming back with more people from my institution next year. So.
Fantastic. Congratulations. We got one more over here.
I'm Rick DeBells from Oregon State University, and what I would like to do is challenge everybody to bring someone else back to the conference next year. I was fortunate, I have 2 colleagues from different schools. My goal next year is to bring a colleague from Oregon State that I'm going to specifically target, that's someone who thinks they need to know more about transfer, I think they need to know more about transfer students, to bring them. But then I'm also going to target someone at my partner schools. And I'm going to go back in the next week and talk with them about it. Let's plant the seed now, and then I'm going to talk in a couple more months, and I'm going to talk in a couple more months. Then I'm going to try and get them to help me present a program so that forces them to fund themselves to come.
Great. Excellent. Thank you. And then Darlene here in the front.
Hello, everybody. I'm Darlene Menzie, and I'm from the University of Minnesota Duluth campus, so way up north. This is my first time at this conference, and I've only been in the field with transfer students for 6 months. So I've worked in student affairs in lots of other areas, lots of student government and orientation and all of that great stuff. So I was very excited to come here just to learn more about the verbiage and make sure I'm speaking the right language, and then taking it to the next step. So one thing that I found out right away on day 1 during the pre-conference is really that we just don't have the data. We haven't mined that to know what our profile of our transfer student is. What does that actually look like? What are they made up of? So that's like my number 1 thing I want to do when I get back. And one thing that Janet said at the pre-conference that I just really loved was to start taking questions or writing down your questions as you go along and keep track of those. And so I did that during this conference, and it's a really, really long list. And that's okay, because my next step to that is that taking those questions and figuring out where they go, what columns they go into, and who do I need to talk to get the answers to those questions. So kind of a 2-stepper.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, moving forward, Rick's already thrown down the gauntlet. So we're gonna keep this going here. Again, be a catalyst for change on your campus related to transfer. Inspire others to put new ideas to practice. It's difficult to do in times when folks are feeling really fragmented, but there's a lot that can be done, and we just have to narrow down that list, prioritize that list, help folks get fired up about the things that we want to do, and not get discouraged when folks don't feel as passionately about this as we do. It's okay, we can bring them along. Be the voice that includes transfer students in your conversations, in your policy making, in the strategic planning of your institution. One thing we always ask is, where are transfers in a written mission of your institution and the vision of your institution, or perhaps your strategic plan? Some of you have a very clear-cut place where transfers fit. Many of us do not. Identify barriers to that transfer work and work hard to either reduce and or eliminate those those barriers. Support your transfer stories with data. The stories are fantastic. They tug at our hearts, but it's the data that will absolutely make a difference when it comes to helping folks really understand and or start participating and supporting transfers. Connect the significance of transfer priorities to those of your colleagues' priorities. Absolutely. We have thoroughly enjoyed hosting you the last few days. Again, stimulated some things to think about, we hope. And we know that this could not happen without your participation, without those of you who have chosen to present at this conference. I love the notion of encouraging more and more of that. The posters this year were outstanding. For those of you who aren't ready to present or want to present but also want to do a poster, let's continue the momentum around that. We will be working with John Gardner Institute and others and other partners across the country to continue this work between now and next February. Our advisory board has got great ideas to help support us in those efforts, so we're really, really excited about the prospects of continuing the work of NISTS over the course of the next year. You'll be hearing from us in various capacities, so look for those. You'll also be getting an evaluation form from us, so make sure you fill that one out too. That's critical to the success of this conference, but thank you to each and every one of you for being here, and please travel safely back to your homes. Thank you.